History celebrates its victories, mourns its defeats, and obsessively documents every battle that shaped the world. But there is one disappearance that rewired geopolitics so violently that every involved nation agreed on the same impossible solution: erase it. And that's why today, when you search the archives, maps, or field reports, you'll find nothing. Not a reference, not a footnote, not even a classified tag hinting that something might once have existed there. Yet, every soldier who survived remembers the same night, the same silence, the same impossible absence that no one has ever been willing to explain. It begins with an operation known only informally as Black Ridge Deployment 12, not a battle, not a conflict, just a deployment. That was the first lie. 2 brigades were sent into the region, both highly trained, both accustomed to unconventional warfare, and both sworn into the kind of secrecy that usually hides experimental weapons testing or political shadow games. But l'infransaldiense, they didn't know why they were chosen. They didn't know why their families were told they'd be out of contact indefinitely. And they certainly didn't know why the maps they were issued showed the terrain as a blank, featureless block, no roads, no structures, no elevation lines. Just a dense square of nothing. Hours before the march, radios began picking up interference, not jamming something stranger. A low rhythmic pulse, like a heartbeat echoing through static. At first, tech operators blamed faulty equipment. But when multiple units using different manufacturers, different frequencies, and different encryption started reporting the exact same phenomenon, panic crept in. It didn't belong to any known signal pattern. It didn't match atmospheric noise. And it definitely wasn't random. The pulse had timing, intent, almost direction. By sunset, both brigades had entered the ridge. That was the last moment anyone saw them together. Within 90 minutes, the first distress calls broke through the static. Not coherent words, just frantic breathing, distant metallic impacts, and what sounded like entire squads sprinting over rocky ground. One voice managed to break through clearly for 3 seconds. 3 seconds that would later get redacted from every transcript. He whispered, "We can't see them," and then nothing. Headquarters attempted to deploy drones for recon. Not one made it past the ridge. They didn't get shot down, they simply dropped from the sky the moment they crossed the boundary. As if gravity spiked or every circuit fried simultaneously. Black boxes retrieved from the wreckage offered no clues, no heat signatures, no electronic anomalies, no mechanical failures, just perfect flight data, until total absence. By dawn, only one brigade emerged. But even calling it a brigade is generous. They staggered out in small clusters, some without weapons, some without uniforms, and some without any memory of the last 12 hours. One man had blood on his hands that wasn't his hand, no recollection of how it got there. Another kept repeating the phrase "the ground moved," even when sedated. A third refused to speak at all and later clawed at the walls of the medical tent until he broke 3 fingers. The medics assumed PTSD, but trauma victims usually react to something recognizable: gunfire, explosions, violence. These soldiers reacted to silence. They were terrified of quiet, the craziest part. Not one of them had a visible injury. No gunshot wounds, no cuts, no fractures, no burns, nothing to indicate they'd been in combat. And yet, their heart rates suggested they had sprinted for hours. Their muscles showed micro-tearing, consistent with prolonged struggle. Their eyes were dilated beyond what medics considered physiologically normal. Something had pushed them to absolute physical limits without leaving a single mark. When the commanding officers demanded a search for the missing brigade, the order was denied within minutes by officials far above military authority. The entire operation was shut down, equipment seized, logs rewritten. Every soldier present reassigned, with some vanishing from the roster entirely as if they'd never served. Families were told their relatives died in a transport accident during routine training, a convenient excuse. Too convenient. But here is where the cover-up collapses under its own weight: geography. The region around Black Ridge changed immediately after the incident. Old maps show a slope. Newer maps post erasure show a flat plain. Satellite images were suddenly replaced with low-resolution composites. And the most suspicious detail: every public map provider, every government geological database, every civilian survey platform updated the area within the same 48-hour window. That kind of synchronization doesn't happen organically. Someone coordinated it, and yet there was a mistake. A tiny, almost invisible glitch left behind by whoever rewrote the terrain, the vegetation pattern. Plants that should grow in shade were now shown in full sun. Tree lines no longer matched natural water flow. Soil density ratings contradicted the topography. In other words, the maps were fake. Poorly faked, considering the stakes. This led independent researchers to look deeper. They found that seismic readings recorded a sharp, focused anomaly on the night of the missing battle, something like an underground shockwave, but with no epicenter and no aftershocks. Almost as if the Earth itself convulsed for a fraction of a second. The event is still labeled sensor malfunction, even though multiple stations hundreds of kilometers apart logged the same pattern. So what actually happened? There are three competing theories, and none of them are comfortable. Theory 1, a political purge disguised as a non-existent battle. An entire brigade removed to prevent leaks, defection, or exposure of illegal operations. But this theory fails to explain the seismic anomaly, the radio pulse, or why no bodies were found. Theory 2, experimental weapons testing gone catastrophically wrong. A prototype device electromagnetic, acoustic, or gravitational malfunctioned and erased anything inside a defined radius. This explains the drones dropping and the soldiers' panic, but not why the surviving brigade remembers an enemy they couldn't see. Theory 3, an encounter with something not accounted for in any military doctrine, not supernatural, no alien, something environmental or physical that we simply don't understand yet. Something that moves silently, leaves no marks, and erases evidence by its very nature. This would terrify governments enough to bury the entire event. But the biggest question remains: if nothing happened, why was every soldier who spoke about it later reassigned, discharged, or declared missing? Why were families silenced with non-disclosure agreements? Why did the terrain change? Why did the maps change? Why does the radio interference still occur in the region years later, even though the military insists they haven't used the ridge since. And here's the detail that chills researchers more than anything. In the survivor logs that escaped deletion, there's a repeated phrase dozens of soldiers wrote it independently. The silence followed us, not an enemy, not gunfire, not fiendet tataktem. It erased the world around them until they had nothing left to fight. And that's why the battle that changed history never made it into history at all.